wisdom,
prudentia,
justice,
justitia,
temperance,
temperantia,
courage.
fortitudo.
Applying ancient philosophy to modern life, this is the Sunday Stoic.
Hey everybody, it's Steve. Welcome to the Sunday Stoic Podcast. Today is a completely unstructured episode in which I will yap about some things and probably have no theme whatsoever. I just thought I would do an episode. I had a revelation. You know, I should have called the podcast the Stoic Redneck, because I think I'm the only redneck Stoic podcaster, because there's a lot of Stoic podcasters out there now. You have the Stoic Solutions podcast, right? The Practical Stoicism podcast. You have Stoic Metal and what else is out there? Massimo's Stoic Meditations. The Daily Stoic has a podcast. Now, when I first started, it was me. Hebert had one out for a while, and there was I can't think of the name of it right now. There's another Stoic podcast out there that's infrequently produced, but the other Stoic podcasts that had existed had all folded by then, so it was just me and him. Now there's a lot of stuff out there. I thought, I don't have anything. I don't know if there's anything about me that stands out. But it's okay to be like the mediocre guy, because that's just who I am, right? I mean, I've always been the mediocre guy. My dad told me when I was a teenager, he said, "Son, you never have to worry about anyone ever wanting you for your money or your looks." And I guess I've lived by that motto my whole life. But I'm just getting by guy. But what makes me different, and I don't think it's a good thing, but I think I'm a Stoic redneck. Of course, that's claiming to be a Stoic. I'm pursuing Stoicism, but that's wordy to say. I am a Prokopton redneck or something. But why do I call myself a redneck? I grew up in rural Ohio, shooting guns, driving three-wheelers on a farm, going hunting, fishing, stuff like that, and everyone I knew, and most of the people I'm back home, vote Republican on everything, go to church every Sunday, and now I live in Arkansas, for crying out loud. I moved from Ohio to Arkansas, but I will say that it gives me perspective, because when I was a kid, I didn't realize this, but when I was a kid, my dad worked at Huffy Bicycle Factory, and eventually my mom did as well. And they didn't make tons of money, and I didn't know this, but there were times when they couldn't afford milk, or could barely afford milk. I don't think we ever did without, but I didn't realize we struggled so hard as a family. And I guess I did know that my friends always had better toys than I did, and newer toys, even up as a teenager, or maybe when I was about, 10, 12, I got an Atari when everyone else was getting a Nintendo, things like that. I mean, I was damn lucky to have that, of course, but at the time I didn't frame the world that way. And so we didn't have a lot, and I think it helped to shape me. Of course, the problem is, and I see this in my parents now, and I see it in myself, you don't have a lot, and then once you get money, then you spend it on stupid crap. You might think it'd make you a better person and more thrifty, but instead it's like, I have money now. I'm going to buy a table saw. I'm going to buy a refrigerator from my wood shop. You know what I need, and until you put the hedonic treadmill on stop, it can get out of hand. And I think Stoicism's helping me to reframe things. I've become less attached to material possessions, and I still have a bunch of them, but I'm actually plotting ways to let a lot of them go, because I feel enslaved to a lot of them. Like Speaking of being a redneck, I'm sitting on the tailgate of a pickup truck right now in my shed next to my 1973 Volkswagen thing. It's a car that I really love. It looks like you're invading Poland when you drive it. It looks like a Kubelwagen from World War II. But it takes a lot of maintenance to keep it running, and I don't love car mechanics, and so I feel enslaved to the car in that way. I just, anytime you own something, you have to maintain that something, and then you are tied to it. I hope you can hear that cardinal singing. So I want to start letting things like that go and then instead invest perhaps in experiences. I want to sell the car that my dad gave me, the Volkswagen, and then use that money to take him to my family's village in Czech Republic to visit where his mother was born. She's 97 now, and it would be really cool to visit there while she's still alive if possible, so we could talk to her about it. So I'm thinking about doing things like that, letting go of some things and doing things like that. But yeah, so I'm kind of a stoic redneck. I went to a 2-year school. I was the first member of my immediate family to go to college. Went to a 2-year school that we called Redneck Tech, oddly enough. Did a major in recreation and wildlife management, and took courses on chainsaw operation and wildlife management and watercraft operation and tree identification. Lots of things to get you ready to be like a park ranger. And then I went on to a 4-year school and studied plant biology, and then did my master's degree in Alberta. And that was a huge shift in my life, was that move. And I didn't I've always been different in my family. I was the quiet one who thought about things and read a lot. That was not a characteristic in my household. My parents don't read. They don't have any books sitting around. I read a lot, and I loved books, and I would think about things a lot and go off in my head somewhere. My dad lives very much with his hands doing work, mechanics, things like that, and I kind of drift off into space, right? And so some things that I learned about me from others, from their observations, were I never did something. I would very rarely do something because other people were doing it, right? I often marched to my own drum, did my own thing. And my dad said he wished that he was as gutsy as I was when he was my age, because I graduated from college. I worked for a bit near home. I worked at Fort Knox as an environmental scientist doing wetlands mitigation. But I then packed up and moved to Alberta, Canada, which was, if you drove from my family's farm to there, is a 36-hour drive, right? It's far away. I moved to another country, right? Canada. And that had a major shift on me, because I was a conservative, Roman Catholic, gun-toting farm kid. And I moved to Alberta, Canada, which some would argue that's pretty much a description of a lot of Albertans, right? But it was different. It was a different culture. And a lot of the people I interacted with at the university were from Europe and other places. So my roommate in Canada was gay, right? And I had never known anyone that was gay before, at least no one who was openly gay at the time. And so, boom, shift to things that I thought one way, and I'm confronted with reality. And then I'm meeting people that have different viewpoints, and it didn't cause a revolution in who I was, but it caused me to evolve and to change and to realize that things that I thought solidly were one way were not that way. And I studied a lot of evolution, which shifted my ideas on religion. And I had friends that were socialists, which lightened my views enlightened my views on politics. It didn't make me, I didn't clone them, but I probably became more of a libertarian at that point, which I know is kind of silly and idealistic and would only work if as a practical system, if everyone was super duper moral, I'd say, and didn't try to take advantage of anyone else, and also cared for the environment in ways that people don't right now. But but it's the only way I'm comfortable with. I'm not a big fan of telling people what to do. It's just, but I'm not in charge of anything, so I guess it doesn't matter. But anyway, it changed my views on things and changed my philosophies. This is before Stoicism, right? And I would encourage that to anyone who has the opportunity to get away from their own bubble. And Canada is not exactly like a massive change from Ohio, but it was enough of a change that it really affected me. And I really enjoyed it up there, Alberta, Canada, where it's minus 40. It was minus 40 Celsius walking to school, you know. A little bit different, a little bit cold, but made me feel good to know that I could get away from everyone I know and do okay. And then I moved to Arkansas for a job at a different school than I am at now. Met my wife online. I was never a dater. I've never really dated anyone except basically my wife and another person or two briefly, right? It was pretty pathetic. I was shy. I still am kind of shy, although I like to play guitar and sing on stage occasionally and silly crap like that, but I'm still shy. And I met her, and we got engaged and got married, and right around then we both got jobs at the same institution. So then our little one came around, and I discovered Stoicism right after that. But things about me that set me apart from other Stoic podcasters, things I don't talk about on the show. Once again, I grew up hunting, right? That is not a very Stoic, at least not a Roman Stoic thing to do, and not something you'd hear about from all the Stoics advocating veganism and things. And I'm not opposed to veganism. I grew up on a farm, though. It's just such a shift in mindset. I grew up raising animals and caring for animals, and then occasionally butchering, slaughtering those animals, and viewing things completely different. It did give me a bit of my own philosophy, which, I don't know, you might think this is stupid, but I have this conviction, at least an idea, that if you've never killed an animal, like a chicken, right, or a cow, or a pig, or whatever it is, whatever farm animal your food preference is, if you've never butchered an animal, killed and butchered an animal, then you probably don't have any business eating meat. I don't mean you have to kill every animal you ever eat, but to hide behind the ignorance of what goes on in farming, especially nowadays with factory farming and things. But just let's not worry about the raising of the animal right now. Let's focus on just the fact that it's taken and killed and then cut apart and packaged. It's so sanitized by the time everyone sees it. But if you don't have the moral, or what do I want to say, the cojones, or whatever the word is, to actually take a chicken, grab it, and cut its head off, right? And that's not something to be done lightly. It's not. It's not something I would do happy, like, woohoo, I'm going to butcher a chicken. But if you can't do that, then you should be a vegetarian. And we should all avoid food that's raised in a manner that's unethical to the organism, at least in terms of quality of life, and horrible to the environment, right? So I have a lot of, I have conflicting worldviews, and Stoicism, is making me think about things a little differently. And then hunting as well. I hunt occasionally still, and I don't have any moral qualms with it. Zero. I have moral qualms with poaching. I have moral qualms with hunting organisms that are, I would call it, still poaching. Things that are in trouble. But the things I hunt are generally overpopulated because all the predators are gone. Things like snow geese and white-tailed deer. And I teach hunter's education for the state of Arkansas so that kids are safe around firearms, which is a big deal. When I learned how to hunt, I won a BB gun in a raffle when I was 8 years old, and that was my first gun, right? And, I know this is something that if you live in, London, you're like, this is completely foreign probably to a lot of you, but some of you maybe not. But I had a BB gun, and then, later a .22 rifle. But there was so much morality, so many ethics, I should say, wrapped up in learning to use a firearm and learning to hunt. I don't think a lot of people get that, though. I mean, a lot of people who do hunt don't have that. But the way I was raised by my father, first of all, there was rigorous training on safety. And then when it came time to hunt, there was pressure on practicing, because if you're going to go out and wound an organism, you have no business being out in the field. And if you do wound an organism, it is your moral obligation to stay out until you find it. You don't let it, lay there wounded. That is not, that's not cool. And that kind of, and then on top of that, there was caring for the land. If you're hunting on someone else's property, you pick up any trash you find, even if you didn't drop it, right? And you volunteer if you to come out and help the farmer or help the landowner to maintain their property, so the animals have a nice habitat to live on and things like that. There was this whole moral framework around it. But I don't do a lot of that anymore. I don't have time to go off hunting. I still do occasionally, but also most of the time I go out hunting, I don't shoot anything, and I have a wonderful time. It's being out in the woods. But occasionally you do, and when you do, you pause and kind of thank the animal in a way. You treat it with the utmost respect, and there's nothing I hate worse than what I would call a killer rather than a hunter, someone who just goes out killing and doesn't obey, first of all, the laws or any kind of moral code. I would become an anti-hunter if that's what I saw all the time. That's what we see presented to us a lot on TV, and a lot of folks ignore the positive impacts that hunters have. Like in Arkansas, they have Hunters for the Hungry, where they donate a large portion of the game they harvest to feeding the hungry. The money from guns and ammo and licenses go to buying habitat and preserving habitat for wildlife. So there's a lot of good that people just don't know about. But I still fully understand I'm not comfortable with slaughtering an animal or killing an animal, and I am not opposed to someone being vegan or vegetarian. And I am completely open to the idea that studying philosophy, I might have a change in like a year. Maybe that'll be me. I might be like, hey, going full vegan now. I don't know that would happen, but I am trying to get away from factory farm foods. It's hard living in rural Arkansas, to be honest, when you have 2 Walmarts in town and that's your main source of food, right? I thought about, I'd like to raise some of my own food, but that's also difficult when you have to, go away for the holidays, 12 hours away to visit parents, and then there's no one around to take care of your organisms. So I have to figure this out. There's a lot of things to figure out, and how to apply a philosophy of life to real life. Because there's an idyllic way, and there's the rubber meets the road, what's really going to work for me and reality. So that's why I'm a Stoic Redneck. I don't plan on changing the course of the show to fit that persona, but it would be kind of a funny podcast title. Hi, y'all. Welcome to the Stoic Redneck. Today we're going to talk about how to make moonshine in the most ethical way possible. Yeah. I don't know if I'm going to do that, but it's a lovely day. Oh, there's a hawk flying by. That's cool. Got my dog laying in the yard right in front of me, bathing in the sun. And it's just a lovely evening. Tomorrow's Monday, and it's back to the grind, back to work. And we'll get up out of bed and do it again. So I don't think I have anything else to say. I just wanted to talk to you for a bit, have a unscripted ramble. Probably drove a lot of listeners away, revealing my hedonistic caveman hunting / farm animal eating tendencies, but I don't expect philosophy like Stoicism to, you can't, in fact, you would fail. If you're someone like me, you read Marcus Aurelius and the next day you're like, well, I'm going to drive a Prius and only eat tofu. You're going to, like I said in my last podcast, you're going to change so many habits that it's just not going to stick. Change has to be gradual and well thought out. And I am slowly changing, but you're not going to, if 10 people study Stoicism and they progress for 30 years, they're not going to end up as the same person with the exact same choices. We're all going to come out a little different. But the important thing is that you are all my sisters and brothers. We're all part of the Cosmopolis, and it's a damn honor to be able to talk to you each week and occasionally hear from you. And I hope, these shows, like this podcast, this specific episode is like talk therapy, right? It's me just putting words together, ideas together. It's probably going to be awful to listen to, and perhaps no one will, and that's completely fine. But it's just nice to be able to be a part of something, even if it's only for a year or two, and then we move on. Maybe in some small way I've helped somebody along the way. I occasionally get thank yous that seem to indicate a few people benefit from this thing I do each week, and that's moving. But of course, I look at it selfishly as well as a way for me to keep on top of things. I keep reading and I keep studying, and this weekly podcast is a reminder that, hey, there's a deadline coming up. You have to have something to talk about. And if you stagnate in your studies, then you'll have nothing to say. And it's been a great way to push me forward. Anyway, have a good week. I'll have another episode coming out this Sunday. Carpe diem.
Thank you for listening to The Sunday Stoic. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, rate, and review The Sunday Stoic on iTunes. Become a member of the Sunday Stoic team, earn rewards, and be an integral part of the show by becoming a patron at www.patreon.com/SundayStoic. Contact the show by emailing sundaystoic@gmail.com or by leaving a voicemail at 501-503-3132. To find out more, visit www.sundaystoicpodcast.com. And as Steve always says, carpe diem.